right, hello everyone. So let's think back to what we did yesterday. We started to formulate systems of inequalities. So as you remember, that is very similar to systems of equations. The only thing that's different is we are using inequalities instead of equations. And we can tell that mainly by using our inequality symbols instead of an equal sign. Okay, so right here we have some lovely systems of equations. Okay, so these are 2 by 2 systems of equations because we have our systems of inequalities, pardon me, because we have 2 inequalities and 2 variables, x and y. Okay, so what we're going to look at on these is how we can graph them and potentially find the solution for each system of inequalities. So let's zoom in right here, look at number 1. So if you want to follow along and take notes, okay, this CUDA software sheet is attached as a PDF on this Schoology page. Okay, so this first one we have y is greater than 4x minus 3 and y is greater than or equal to negative 2x plus 3. Okay, so we're kind of going to treat this like a y equals mx plus b situation, okay? So we can tell the slope and the y-intercept. So this here on the right would be our mx plus b. So we can tell what the slope and the y-intercept is. Okay, so our y-intercept on this one would be negative 3. That's for the b. So our first point would be at negative 3 right here. Okay, and then how we find our next point is using that slope. So we have a slope of 4, which means that's 4 over 1. Doing rise over run, so that means we're going to go up 4 and over to the right 1. So up 4 over, up 4 over to the right 1. That puts our next point right here. Okay. All right, so we have 2 points now, which means we can draw our line through. Okay, so if you'll recall, we're going to recall some graphing inequalities skills. All right, so we have 2 options for lines. Okay, so we could either draw a solid line or we could draw a dotted line. Okay, we're going to draw a solid line when we have greater than or equal to or less than or equal to in the inequality. We're going to draw a dotted line when we have greater than or less than in the inequality. Okay, so on this first one, we have just greater than. So that means we're just going to draw a dotted line. Okay. So we're going to draw a dotted line through those points. All right, and then the next thing we're going to look at is where would our y values lie? So we're saying that y is greater than that 4x minus 3, which is the line we just graphed, okay? So y is greater than that line. So where are the greater y values? They're going to be, it's kind of hard to see which way is above and below that line, right? But on this part, so I'm going to shade right here, you'll see that we have our greater y values right here compared to below the line, okay? All right, let's look at that next inequality. So we have y is greater than or equal to negative 2x plus 3. So find that. I'm going to change colors really quick. So we're going to find that y-intercept. Okay, the y-intercept is positive 3, so that means it's going to be right here is our first point. Okay, and then to find our second point, we look at the slope. So we have a slope of negative 2, and that's over 1 for rise over run. So that means we go down 2 to the right 1. So down 2 to the right 1, that puts our next point right here. Okay, and now we can draw a line through those 2 points. So let's think about, are we going to draw a solid line or a dotted line? This one is greater than or equal to, so we're going to draw a solid line. All right, so a solid line through those points. That would look like that. Okay, and then we need to think about where to shade. So again, this is greater than, right? So the y values are going to be greater than that line that we just drew. So it would be shaded on this part above that line, okay? So since we have graphed two inequalities, we're going to look at where those shadings overlap, okay? So if you look over here on this side, I'm going to erase this part because we only have one color shaded there. We're looking for where we have both colors shaded, okay? Okay, same thing with right here. We only have that red shaded right there. Okay, so what I have left is the part where we had both colors shaded, okay? So that is where we could have any possible solution lying in that shaded area left over, okay? That is where any of our possible solutions for this system of inequalities could lie. All right, so let's move on to number 2. Okay, so number 2, we have y is greater than or equal to negative 5x plus 3, and then y is greater than negative 2. All right, so we're going to follow the same kind of steps. So let's see, we're going to look at that as the mx plus b form for our slope and our y-intercept. So our top one, the y-intercept would be 3. So let's plot that first point at that 3, okay? And then our slope is negative 5, so that'd be negative 5 over 1 for rise over run. Okay, so that means we're going to go down 5 to the right 1. So down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right 1. Our next point would be right here. Okay, and now we can draw a line. So let's think about, are we going to do a solid line or a dotted line? So we have a greater than or equal to, and if we have the equal to, then that means we're going to do a solid line. Okay, so a solid line right through those points, like so. Okay, awesome. Now we need to think about where is it going to be shaded. So on this one again, we have y is greater to or greater than or equal to that line we drew. So we're going to look for the greater y values. So it'd be shaded on this side. Okay. All right. Then our second inequality is simply y is greater than negative 2. Okay, so think about that related to when we have something like y is equal to negative 2. All right, how would we graph that? We would look on the y-axis and find negative 2. So that would be right here. Okay, that's where y is negative 2. And since we don't have a slope here, it would just be a horizontal line at y equals negative 2. Okay, so that's where our line is going to lie. Okay, but instead of an equal sign, we had that greater than sign. Okay, let's draw that line first. Think about, is it going to be dotted or solid? Right, we don't have the or equal to part, so we're going to have a dotted line. Dotted line right here. Okay, and then we said y is greater than negative 2. So that means we're going to have the y values that are greater than negative 2. So it's going to be everything above that line we just drew. Okay. All right, and then just like last time, we're going to erase those parts on this graph that only have the one color shaded. So over here, that's gone, since that's only green. And then right here, that's only red, so that's gone. Okay, so that top right part where we have both green and red shaded is where all of our possible solutions could lie. Okay, right there in that part where both colors are shaded. All right, let's look at the next one. Number 3. All right, so we have something a little different than the last two. Y is less than 3, and then y is less than or equal to negative x plus 1, okay? So we have flipped inequality signs, all right? So let's look at y is less than 3. Remember we said that's the same thing as our equation y equals 3. So we're going to look where y is 3 on the y-axis. So let's put a point there. right here, okay? And then since we don't have a slope, we don't have our m, that means we're gonna have a horizontal line at y equals 3, okay? So is this gonna be a solid or dotted line? It's going to be dotted, right? Because we don't have the or equal to part. So a dotted line right here, all right? And then now let's look where to shade. So it says y is less than 3. So we're going to shade where the y values are less than 3, which means below that line, okay? So that's how, when the sign is flipped, that's how it's different, is we're shading above or below. This one we're shading below compared to the last one, right? Now let's look at the next one. So we have y is less than or equal to negative x plus 1. Okay, so what is our y-intercept? It's 1. So let's put a point, our first point right there at 1 on the y-axis, okay? And then our slope is negative 1, and that would be over 1. So that means we're going down 1 to the right 1 for our next point. And the next point would be right there, okay? All right, and then for a solid or dotted line, does this have the or equal to part or not? It does, so we're gonna do a solid line through those 2 points. So like this, okay? All right, and then we have y again is less than or equal to that line we just drew. So we're gonna shade beneath that to where the y values are less than. So right here. All right, and then we're gonna erase all the parts that only have one color shaded. So erase this part because it's just green shaded, and then erase this little tiny part up here. Okay, so what we have left is where we have the 2 colors shaded. So there is where all of our possible solutions could lie, in that section, okay? All right, so go ahead and try number 4 by yourself, okay? So pause this video, try number 4 by yourself, and then come back when you're done. All right, so now we're gonna look at this activity we had planned. So let's see. All right, so here's what you're gonna look at. This PDF that is the treasure hunt activity attached on Schoology. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're going to, it gives you these 5 inequalities, okay? So you're gonna graph these 5 inequalities just like we were practicing on that worksheet onto this graph, okay? So you're gonna graph those, all right? And then you're gonna compare it to this map that is also attached as a PDF, okay? Then when you graph those 5 inequalities, there should be one section on that graph where all 5 shadings match up, okay? That section on the graph is where we've hidden a treasure in the class. And although y'all can't go find the treasure, right, we want y'all to describe to us where that treasure is in the classroom using this map, okay? So if it was over here in this top left corner, you would say, oh, it's right behind Miss Sims's desk, okay? If it's over here on the bottom left, you would say it's by the door, okay? So use this map, okay? Graph these 5 inequalities and see where on the map the treasure is hidden, okay? And then after that, you have an exit ticket to complete, so make sure you do that, and we'll see y'all later.